crafts. When people began to make clothes and furniture, a tradition of craft making began. Over centuries, craft workers have developed highly skilled techniques. The end products are practical and decorative objects. These objects can be admired for their beauty, as well as used in everyday life. Potter's wheel. Making pottery using a potter's wheel requires great skill. Glass blowing. Glass blowing is a specialized craft which may take years to learn. Find out more. The Bayeux Tapestry. French needlewomen created the 11th century Bayeux Tapestry, which depicts the Norman conquest of England in 72 scenes. Despite its name, this is not a woven tapestry but an embroidery. Its linen surface is stitched with colored wool. The 70 m, 230-foot, hanging is made up of several pieces, probably to allow several teams to work at once on different sections, which were joined up when they were finished. Furniture. Beds, tables, and chairs have existed in similar forms since ancient times. Cupboards and chests of drawers are not as old, and have been developed more recently. The furniture of any particular period often reflects the fashions of the time, and so styles can vary enormously. Modern shapes. This table shows the curved forms that are popular in the 20th century. Old into new. Recycling old materials to make furniture creates new designs too. Find out more. Furniture. Beds, chairs, chests, and tables have existed, as far as we know, since around 1500 BC in ancient Egypt. Beds. In Europe, until the 1600s, beds were owned only by the wealthy. Everyone else slept on the floor. Cupboards. Our cupboards and chests of drawers are descendants of the simple storage chests used by the Anglo-Saxons. By Norman times, such chests doubled up as chairs, tables, or even beds, and gradually started developing towards modern storage units. Chairs. In ancient times, high-backed chairs were seats only for very important people. Everyone else sat on stools or benches, or the floor. Stools remained the standard form of seating for centuries. Chairs with backs were rare before the Middle Ages, and upholstered, padded chairs did not appear until the 1600s. Portable furniture. In early and medieval times, those who could afford furniture wanted it to be portable, so they could carry it with them from castle to castle. As late as the early 1600s, much furniture was still made with this in mind. Large pieces were designed to be taken apart and put together easily. History of furniture. Fashions in furniture change just like fashions in clothing. Many changes are partly due to taste. Sometimes people choose very decorative furniture, and sometimes they prefer it to be very plain. Often changes come from the development of new materials or techniques which inspire designers. Wood has always been the most popular material for furniture, as it works well with simple and complicated designs. Today, furniture designers have created types of furniture that are made of plastic, steel, glass, and other modern materials. Washstand. This British cast iron washstand was made between 1903 and 1911 in Art Nouveau style. Glass. To make glass, sand is heated to melting point with limestone and sodium carbonate. Glass was invented in Egypt about 9,000 years ago. Impurities in early glass gave it beautiful colors, and it was used for jewelry. Later, c. 1500 BC, glass vessels were made. Clear glass developed later. Decanter and glass. This molded decanter and glass were made in the 1950s. Rainbow glass vase. This vase was made by American glass artist Louis Comfort Tiffany. Find out more. Glass. Ancient Egyptian colored glass, in shades including blue, green, violet, red, and black, was first used to imitate precious stones. Useful glass. The earliest glass vessels were formed by molding, a method still used today. The molten, liquid, glass is pressed over a shaped mold, sometimes with a pattern. Cut glass. The hard surface of glass can be cut, just as jewelers cut gemstones, to create facets, flat surfaces set at angles to each other to catch the light. Cut glass work requires a heavy, clear glass such as lead glass, which contains lead oxide. Tiffany. Ancient glass buried in the ground for centuries acquires a soft rainbow sheen, patina. American glassmaker Louis Comfort Tiffany recreated this sheen in his famous Favril glass. Decorative and stained glass. Stained glass. Many churches all over the panels made up of colored glass pieces are called stained glass. The glass is sometimes stained, as the name suggests, but it may also be painted or colored by adding other materials at the early stages of glassmaking. Stained glass is most often seen in church windows. Decorative glass has beautiful color, and is made so that it catches the natural light. It may be a deep, rich color, or a soft shade. It is often molded like pottery or metal, or it may be blown into shape. Stained glass. Many churches all over the world have stained glass windows showing religious stories. Jewelry. The custom of wearing items of jewelry is almost as old as mankind. Some people wear it as decoration, while others wear it to show how much money they have. Many items of jewelry are made from precious materials and are very expensive, but jewelry can be made from anything, from plastic or nails to feathers. Silver. This brooch has been delicately made from silver. It takes years of training to create such detailed work. Necklace of nails. Steel nails have been hammered to look like feathers in this modern necklace made in 1982. Find out more. Jewelry. In ancient times, jewelry served as a kind of piggy bank. It was used as a means of storing wealth, which was always close at hand. Engagement ring. The use of engagement rings was introduced by the Romans. The first engagement rings were of plain iron, but by AD 100 gold rings were in use. Wedding rings were a later development. Poison rings. For noble Romans who preferred death to dishonor, a poison ring, hollowed out to conceal poison, kept the means of suicide, literally, at hand. In the Middle Ages, poison rings became efficient murder weapons. When you shook hands with your enemy, a sharp point on the ring released the poison into his blood. Viking brooches. A Viking woman always wore two large oval brooches, called tortoise brooches, from the shape. These served the purpose of modern pockets and handbags. Everything she needed to keep handy, her keys, knife, comb, sewing kit, and purse, hung from them on little chains. Forms of jewelry. Gold and silver jewelry was developed around the beginning of the Bronze Age. Modern jewelers also use the precious metal called platinum. Jewelry comes in many forms, including bracelets, brooches, necklaces, finger rings, and earrings. Some jewelry has special significance, such as signet and wedding rings, identity and friendship bracelets, crowns and crucifixes. Different styles of jewelry change all the time. Many are influenced by different cultures. Silver and quartz neckring, Denmark, 1959. Modern brooch, US, 1947. Art Deco enameled brooch, Netherlands, Celsius 1925. Precious jewels. Colored stones, gems, were popular in Egypt and Mesopotamia in ancient times. In Europe it was not until the Roman period that they became valuable. Diamond, ruby, emerald, and sapphire are called precious, others are semi-precious. Gems are valued for color, brilliance, and hardness. Gems must be hard, and not likely to crack. If a gem is rare it adds to the value. Good blue diamonds are rarer, and so more costly than white ones. Diamonds are forever huge. Beautifully cut diamonds, such as this one, are often owned by royalty, or bought by famous celebrities. Find out more. Gemstones. Gemstones have been used for jewelry since very ancient times, but first became an essential part of the jeweler's art in Roman times. Almost immediately, the Romans started making paste, glass, jewelry for those unable to afford the real thing, like costume jewelry today. Magic gems. Gems were also thought to have magic powers. Emeralds were believed to improve the memory, amethysts to cure drunkenness, and rubies to ward off misfortune. Birthstones. Many people like to wear their birthstone, the gem associated with the month of their birth. The traditional stones, from January to December, are garnet, amethyst, bloodstone, diamond, emerald, pearl, ruby, sardonyx, sapphire, opal, topaz, turquoise. But there are many variations of this list, including cheaper and synthetic alternatives. Famous gems. Large, perfect diamonds are rare, and when they are found they become famous. They include the Koh-i-Noor, Mountain of Light, once owned by Indian emperors and now among the British crown jewels, the Blue Hope diamond, said to bring misfortune to its owners, and the enormous Cullinan diamond, which was cut into 9 splendid jewels. One of the largest sapphires in the world is owned by the Smithsonian Natural History Museum. It is called the Logan Sapphire. Metalwork. Metals have always been useful. First fashioned as tools and weapons, they are now shaped in different ways by creative artists. Decorative metalwork is created using both precious and non-precious metals to make anything from statues to silverware. Cutlery. This richly decorated cutlery, made in 1985, is made from gilded brass with plastic handles. Skilled metalwork. This beautifully decorated lamp shows the detail that is possible. Find out more. Metalwork. Many metal items are made by heating the metal to melting point, then casting it in a mold. One method is the lost wax technique. Carved wax encased in a clay or plaster mold is heated until it runs out of a hole or is lost. Molten, liquid, metal is then poured into the empty mold. Shaping metal. Metals can also be shaped by hammering. Some metals can be cold forged, that is, hammered, while cold. Others need to be heated to soften them and prevent them from becoming brittle. Joining metal. Pieces of metal can also be joined together with solder. This is an alloy, mixture of metals, with a low melting temperature. It is melted onto the surfaces to be joined, and quickly cools to form a joint. Gold and silver. Gold and silver have been used for ornaments and tableaux since ancient times. They are too soft to use, unless blended with small amounts of other metals. Informational hallmarks stamped on finished articles record the amount of pure gold or silver in the metal. Other metals are used decoratively in many ways, on lamps, vases, tableaux, statues, and gates. They may be gilded, which means they are covered with a fine sheet of gold. Silver vase. This silver vase was made in the 1920s. It is decorated with leaves and berries on the outside, and is smooth inside. Find out more. Gold and silver. The purity of gold articles is measured in 24ths, called carats. Pure gold is 24 carat, while 18 carat gold, for example, has 18 parts of gold to 6 parts of other metals. Foil. The softness of gold means that craftsmen can hammer it into sheets of incredible thinness, called foil. As long ago as ancient Egypt, goldsmiths could produce gold foil only 0.005 millimeters thick. Rolled gold. To make a little gold go a long way, goldsmiths sometimes produce rolled gold. This is made by fixing a thin layer of gold onto a cheaper, base, metal, then rolling the two layers together to form a thin sheet of base metal covered in a film of gold. Shaping. Goldsmiths and silversmiths have many techniques. The metal may be melted and poured into molds, or hammered into thin sheets, which can be shaped by more hammering. Sometimes designs are cut from a sheet using a shaped mold, a method called stamping. Paper. Paper can be decorated in several ways, such as marbling or printing. Such papers are used as wallpapers, gift wraps, and in books. Origami is the ancient art of folding paper to make decorative objects and boxes. Papier-mâché is paper that has been mixed with water and reduced to a pulp. It is then used to model or create objects. Recycling. As many trees must be cut down to produce the paper we use, companies have started recycling paper. Wallpaper. People put up wallpaper to decorate their homes, and there are thousands of patterns. Find out more. Paper. Marbled paper, with a decorative pattern of swirling colors, was developed in the Middle East, where it was known as cloud art. It was probably introduced to Europe at the time of the Crusades, and from the 1500s has been commonly used for the empty first and last page of a book, called the end papers. Japan. In places like Japan, decorative paper is commonly used for room dividers, screens, lampshades, fans and even clothing. Wallpaper. Wallpapers first came into use in the 1600s, though the earliest wallpaper surviving today, an English black and white design, dates back to about 1509. It was not until the late 1600s that printers started producing wallpaper in rolls. Papier-mâché. The people who invented paper, the Chinese, were also the first to use papier-mâché, as early as AD 2. They used it for pots and even wore helmets. Uses of papier-mâché. Today, papier-mâché is commonly used for costume jewelry, display items, and theatrical props. On film sets, large objects like boulders are often made of lightweight papier-mâché for easy handling. Pottery and ceramics. Around 7000 BC, people in Egypt and Sumeria discovered how to make pottery by shaping soft clay, then hardening it with heat. This is still the method we use, though modern potters have developed their techniques further. Handmade pots are still valued, since everyday pottery is made in factories. Russian cup. This Russian cup left parenthesis 1923 is made from porcelain with enamel design. Russian cream jug. This Russian cream jug was made in the 1920s. It is made of porcelain and decorated with colorful enamel. Porcelain. Enamel decoration. Enamel color. Find out more. Pottery and ceramics. Clays differ in how easy they are to shape. The most easily worked types may shrink and crack when fired, so these can be mixed with harder materials such as sand, or even dried cow dung. Most clays are mixed with other materials to improve them before being worked. Coiled pots. Coiled pots are made by rolling clay into long strips and coiling them round to form the shape required. The pattern created by the coils can be kept, or smoothed out, after the shape is completed. Hand-modeled. Pottery can also be modeled by hand. Ancient peoples often used their feet instead, or bashed the clay into shape with wooden mallets. Molding. Another method is to press the clay into pre-shaped molds. Some early potters used baskets as molds. These burned away during firing, leaving a basket-shaped clay vessel. Metal molds have the advantage that they withstand the heat and can be reused. Potter's wheel. Some 6,000 years ago, the potter's wheel was developed in Mesopotamia. This is a rotating base on which the clay stands, turning around, as the potter works. Modern potters use electricity to spin the wheel. In ancient times, hands or feet provided the power. Natural clays come in every shade from white through grays, creams, and browns to nearly black. Some of the earliest decorated pots were made by putting on a pattern using different colored clay. Tablour. Today, we associate pottery with tablour. But china plates date back only to the 1700s. Before then, plates were of metal or wood, and until 1500, of bread, which you could eat instead of washing up. China and porcelain. The finest china ware is porcelain, made from china clay, mixed with a volcanic stone called pétals. Porcelain differs from other pottery in being fired at a much higher temperature, which fuses the china clay and pétals together to give a pure white color and glass-like effect. Some of the most famous European porcelain factories include Meissen in Germany, and Sèvres in France. Teapot and bowl. This hand-painted teapot and sugar bowl is an example of Japanese style. Find out more. China and porcelain. Porcelain differs from other pottery in being fired at a much higher temperature. This gives a pure white color and glass-like effect. Japan. Porcelain manufacture in Japan dates back to 1227. But the greatest Japanese porcelain was made in the 1600s. This included the beautifully decorated kakemono and emery ware. Bone china. Bone china was invented in England around 1794. The clay is mixed with bone ash to create a white china. Feldspar china is a cheaper version made with feldspar, a volcanic rock. Famous factories. Famous European porcelain factories include Meissen in Germany and Sèvres in France. Both date back to the early 1700s, and their early pieces are now highly valued. Glazing and firing. Newly shaped pots are fired in a special oven, called a kiln. Pots are also glazed. This means first coating them with a layer of glassy material, which the heat of the kiln, in a second firing, fuses. This makes the pot watertight and looks nice. The earliest pots were dried in the sun, but potters soon found that fire hardened them better. A modern kiln can fire, at one time, as many pots as a medieval potter could produce in 1 year. Blue bowl. This bowl was made in the 1930s. Its decoration was applied, and then a blue glaze was put on top of this. Painted ceramics. Painted decoration of pottery began, as long ago as 5000 BC in Egypt and Southeast Europe. The surface of the piece is glazed before it is painted, then the china is given another firing to fix the colors. For more complicated patterns, a whole series of paintings and firings is required. In the 1920s, Art Deco Chinaware had bright colors and jazzy designs, while famous artists such as Clarice Cliff and C. Cooper produced new shapes and styles. Picture: this picture was made in the 1920s. Its decoration shows workers in the fields in the Soviet Union. Find out more. Painted ceramics. In ancient Greece, Athenian vase painters perfected a style of painting called black figure around 600 BC with black designs on a red clay background. By 530 BC they had developed a more finely detailed style called red figure, leaving the design in the natural red of the clay and painting the background black. Maiolica. Brightly painted pottery became fashionable in Europe in the Renaissance, when a white tin glaze was developed which was an ideal surface for painting. This painted earthenware, known as faience, or maiolica, is often covered with brilliantly colored scenes from the Bible or from classical authors. Delftware. In the 1600s, German potters at Delft began copying Chinese blue and white painted chinaware. Delftware inspired many imitators. The most popular was the Chinese-style willow pattern, which is not Chinese at all, but made in England. Earthenware and stoneware. Earthenware may be called the basic form of pottery. It is fired at a low temperature, so it can be made even with the most basic kilns. It is porous, which means it will let in water. Therefore, it needs a glaze to make it watertight. Earthenware is used for tiles, flower pots, and other decorative objects. In a hotter kiln, the clay fuses into a harder, fairly watertight form. This is called stoneware. American earthenware bowl. This American earthenware bowl was made in 1947. It has been decorated with the industrial design. Needlework. The decoration of fabrics began for practical reasons. Stitch patterns developed to hold pieces of fabric together. They also strengthened the seam. This is the place that two different pieces of fabric meet. Over the centuries, many forms of decorative needlework have developed around the world. Sewing tools. Different threads can be used. A tape measure is an essential tool. Quilt. A work of art. Many intricate and beautiful patterns have been created using advanced needlework techniques. Lace. Lace is a delicate pattern of threads which is used for ornament only. There are two types. Like embroidery, needlepoint lace is made with the needle. It is an old craft, dating back to ancient Egypt. Bobbin lace was not developed until the 16th century. Bobbin lace is created by twisting threads around a pattern of pins. These are stuck into a pillow, which is used as a support. Machine lace. Since the mid-19th century, most of the lace we buy has been machine-made. Embroidery. Embroidery is the art of decorating the surface of a fabric, using needle and thread. Before major industries, it was a popular occupation, as many people relied on working by hand. Today it remains a very popular hobby. The world's most famous embroidery is the Bayeux Tapestry. It was made around 1067 to commemorate the Norman conquest of England. There are 79 scenes in the Bayeux Tapestry, and it is 70 m, 230 foot, in length. Taking time. Embroidery requires a lot of patience. Thousands of stitches go into every piece of fabric, and they must be neat. Find out more. Embroidery. The oldest surviving English embroidery is a stole piece of clothing, found in the tomb of St. Cuthbert in Durham. It was dated AD 905. Medieval embroidery. Medieval embroidery was very functional. Embroidered wall hangings were not just beautiful, they cut down on cold drafts in chilly castles. Armies relied on banners and clothes stitched with heraldic designs to tell each other apart. Samplers. Samplers are pieces of fabric worked in a variety of stitches. The practice of working samplers developed in the 1400s when they served as pattern books to record different stitches. Later, children were required to make samplers as exercises. Only today are they worked for pleasure alone. Berlin woolwork. In the early 1800s, printed patterns for needlepoint pictures were introduced. Working these in colored wools quickly became known as Berlin woolwork. The Victorian household was cluttered with needlepoint footstools, fire screens, and mats, many of them depicting Queen Victoria's favorite spaniel. Knitting and crochet. Knitting and crochet are two ways of joining loops of yarn to form a fabric which is more elastic than cloth. Knitting is carried out on two or more needles, working on one row of stitches at a time. Crochet uses just one needle, which is actually a hook, and is worked on one stitch at a time. Knitting machines were used to make commercial knitwear in the 19th century, and are now popular. Getting started. When people begin knitting and crochet they often work on small squares. Applique with knitted shapes. Horizontal stripes. Ridged square medallion. Find out more. Knitting and crochet. Nobody knows how old knitting is, but the skill was well established in the East by AD 300. The straight, pointed knitting needles we use now date back to the Middle Ages. A man's job. In the Middle Ages, knitting was a man's job, women only spun the yarn. Boys had to study for 6 years to become professional knitters. For their final tests they had to produce a selection of work, including a knitted carpet. Knitting around the world. Each land has its traditional knitting stitches or patterns. European decorative knits are often inspired by flowers and fruits, creating daisy, wheat ear, or rosebud patterns. Favorite motifs in Scandinavia are snowflakes, reindeer, and fir trees. South American knitters favor llamas. Working wool. Around the coasts of Europe, fishermen wore heavy sweaters of oiled wool, knitted in traditional patterns from the twisted stitches of cable work to anchor and lighthouse designs. Fashionable today, they began as a way of creating different clothes to help identify bodies of fishermen drowned at sea. Patchwork and quilting. Patchwork is the technique of sewing bits of cloth together into a mosaic. It started as a way to use scraps of fabric. Quilting is sewing layers of cloth together. It started as a way to make bed covers and clothes thicker. Both have become popular crafts. Patchwork is usually built up in parts, which are then sewn together. Hundreds of regular patchwork designs have been developed. Alternatively, you can sew irregular patches together. Quilting. A quilt is like a fabric sandwich. Padding is the filling between two pieces of cloth. It is held in place with stitches. Find out more. Patchwork and quilting. Patchwork was used as early as 1000 BC in lands as far apart as Egypt and China. It was developed in Europe in the 1000s, and really took off when Crusaders returned from Palestine with news of the Saracens' beautiful patchwork banners. Patchwork is usually built up in blocks, which are then sewn together. This is much more practical than trying to handle a large item like a bed cover in one go. Hundreds of regular patchwork designs have been developed. Today, you can buy plastic or metal templates, patterns, for the pieces, instead of having to cut your own. Alternatively, you can sew irregular patches together, overlapping, to create a crazy patchwork. Log cabin patchwork is a famous American technique, using strips of contrasting light and dark fabric. These are built up in imitation of the way a real log cabin is made. It's a good way of using up leftover scraps too narrow for any other purpose. A more complicated tradition is Mayflower patchwork, so called because pilgrims sailing on the Mayflower to America are said to have devised it, using flour sacks as the base. The patches are squares folded around a smaller contrast square, creating a texture effect. A traditional English patchwork pattern uses hexagons, six-sided pieces, grouped together into rosettes. These can be sewn together at random, or be joined with a linking border to create a repeat pattern. This is sometimes called grandmother's flower garden. The rosettes form the flowers, and the border is the path between the flower beds. A quilt is a fabric sandwich. Down or flock padding is the filling between two pieces of cloth. It is held in place with lines of stitches, which create a pattern on the surface. As quilting developed, the patterns became more and more complicated. Patchwork quilts unite both techniques to create a beautiful and practical item. The patchwork quilt achieved its finest period in America during the 1800s. Special occasion quilts included freedom quilts presented to young men on the 21st birthday, memory quilts made from a dead person's clothing, and bride quilts prepared for a bottom drawer. Quilting parties, or bees, when groups, traditionally of women, meet to work together on a patchwork quilt, became popular in the 1800s in both England and America.